The number one thing that is stopping you right now from living this dream life that you have, this life where you're fully aligned with your passions and your life purpose, is not that you don't have an idea of what your life purpose is, but it's rather that you don't have the right energy, the right body to fuel you and motivate you to find this thing deep inside that your body knows as the perfect thing for you to pursue. Because I've been there myself before. I know how it feels. All of this guilt and shame that comes up when I put down this heavy backpack of mine in my bedroom, grab my computer and begin watching those dumb YouTube videos. The ones that are just giving you the cheap dopamine and literally 0 degree of alignment or inspiration with your life purpose. And hours passed as I sit there, letting the screen control me, rather than being out there and conquering life and working towards my bigger vision. Rather than putting in the reps daily to be one step closer to living from my higher self. And it took me quite a while to figure out what exactly was causing this cycle to happen and repeat. And of course, you have those people who can blame it on the internet, install a couple screen time apps here and there. But then I really wanted to know what exactly caused me to feel tired. What exactly was sucking away all of the energy and all of my power, which is supposed to fuel me for my entire day and help me maximize this 16 hours that I have every single day to build a life that I really want. After testing this routine and changing that factor, I finally found the devil. I finally found the jackpot. I found the thing that was actually draining all of my energy and making me feel tired all day. And funny thing is that you wouldn't believe how basic this factor is when I point it out. And so many people take this factor for granted. Blindly listening to what other people say instead of actually tracking and testing it out for them. So straight up, let me ask you a very simple question to get the gears clicking in your head and help you start reflecting on this one factor rather than just have me yap this entire video. What was the last thing that you ate? It's really as simple as that. What was the last thing that you ate and how did you feel afterwards? It's really funny because when I ask people that, normally their guts would go up and they would be like, oh wait, is this some kind of trick question there? But I can promise you this is not a trick question. Literally, what was the last thing that you ate? How did it make you feel? Did you feel this surge in energy? Or did it feel more like this heavy drain in your body afterwards? And how about 3 hours later? Did you still feel energetic? Or do you still begin to feel more sleepy? Again, these sounds like such simple questions, right? But if you can be patient and open-minded, changing this one factor right here can literally transform your entire life. And I'm actually not kidding. I'm being super serious about this because I've gone through this myself. And in fact, I was probably way worse than you when I first heard that nutrition was the factor that was making me feel tired and draining all of your energy, because it took me a whole 6 months to admit to myself about this truth before actually implementing it in my life. And I really hope by making this video, you can at least gain some awareness and not make the same mistake as me, because at the end of the day, I can't help you take action. I can't really magically appear in your life and tell you to do this and do that every single second. It really comes down to you and how much you really value life. And what I can do in this video is give you the broader frameworks and show you some of the fundamental truths and wisdoms passed down by generations, so then you can be more aware of your own situation and your own nutrition and change accordingly. So now I propose to you that the first step, or one of the first steps to living a greater life that you want, is being aware of yourself. And that means being aware of your nutrition, your diet, and whatever that comes into your awareness. Because most of your friends and those today in society won't do this. Not because they don't know how to do this, but because they don't have the ambition to live a greater and fulfilled life. They don't have the ambition to live a life that aligns with their values. They're happy with the mundane life. But most likely, if you're watching this video, I assume you're not someone who wants to settle in for a normal and typical life. You're probably someone who really wants to maximize this one life that you have and squeeze all of the juice that you can and really look back on your deathbed with no regrets. And you can proudly say that you lived an awesome life before you pass away. Once you're aware of what you're eating consistently on a daily basis, I want you to also think about any energy dips that you experience throughout the day. And if you can't really recall any of the energy dips, that's okay. But have a list of food that you suspect which may be the culprit of your energy, right? Or maybe some activities that you did which drain your energy. And feel free to just grab a paper right now or just type it down somewhere if ideas pop up. What I really found when I was doing this reflection exercise on my own, just solely reflecting on my diet, was that eating carbohydrates, and I mean rice, spaghetti, pasta, made me feel extremely heavy and tired afterwards. If we think back to the origins of these carbohydrate foods in the first place, why did it really exist? Right? Why was carbs invented? Or, put it in a simple term, when was carbs mostly industrialized and mostly produced? We could think back to the Industrial Revolution, where people started building these machines, and then we started using these machines to extract wheat from farms, right? And start, cranking more rice and then feeding it to a lot of people. The reason why carbs exist is because they are for industrial workers who are doing manual labor work, right? If you've studied basic body science, you will know that carbs gives you energy, right? It gives you physical energy. And the problem with that is that most of us in this day and age don't do physical labor. So if you think about it, if we're eating so many carbs and we're not having a source of output to release all of these carbs, then it's going to store all of these processed sugar in our body. And what's going to happen is that we're going to feel tired because our digestive system is trying to get rid of all of these carbs, but then we're not helping it because we're not doing any physical labor, right? As a student, how many hours during the day do you spend actually doing exercise? Maybe if you're an athlete, then you probably spend like 2 to 3 hours, but that's really not the mass population, right? That's only a really niche population. But even in general, let's just say you're a healthy human being, you probably spend, let's say, 1 to 2 hours every single day, maximum, just doing physical exercise. So then you're saying you have 20 hours just sitting down on a chair or either sleeping on your bed and not doing any physical exercise. So then where does your carbs go, right? How can you burn your carbs out? That's the problem right there. So what we actually need to do as beings who are focused more in intellectual work, right, and work that requires our brain to be sharp, is that we need food that supports that. And it sounds really obvious, right? If you're going to give electric to a gasoline vehicle, obviously it's not going to function well. And that's what we're actually doing with our bodies. As you can see, people mindlessly just queuing up and eating pizza and eating all of these things. And I'm not saying that we're not supposed to eat that, but eating that every single day, and they're complaining about, oh, why don't I have energy to do this? Why do I feel the sleepiness afterwards, right? Is that you're not feeding yourself the right food. You're not using your own user manual in the right way. So how are you expecting your own body, your own car, to drive to the vision that you really want to pursue? It's really as simple as that. So what are sharper foods? What are foods that actually fit us nowadays, especially when we're doing more intellectual work? Proteins, vegetables, fruits. Those are scientifically proven to help our brain feel sharper and feel more mentally energetic. The best type of food to eat are whole food. Organic whole food. And these are the type of food that have not been processed or refined. Or even though it has been processed, it's as little as possible. And it's free from all of the additives and all of the artificial substances that you'll see in these dirty processed food. Now, to make it more clear and to make it more practical for you, let me go through this list of food that I eat and don't eat to give you like a better idea on what foods you can test out for yourself and see how it affects your energy level, right? And the key word there is test out for yourself, because I can tell you anything, and the most stupid thing is to believe me without actually validating it for you, right? And maybe after 1 or 2 weeks, when you try out this list of food and you realize that, oh, suddenly my energy actually explode, then yes, you can follow this. But then at least do that, right? Do the process of testing it out for yourself rather than solely listening to me or anyone else and thinking that that's the only option for you, because everyone is distinct, everyone is unique. What might suit you might not suit the other person. But then in general, this is going to be kind of the universal principle for all healthy beings. So starting off with some of the key food groups to avoid: wheat, dairy, sugar, corn, soy, artificial chemicals. Because what you realize with these food groups that I mentioned is that they're super processed. And the problem when it's super processed is that it's not organic. It's hard for you to digest. So some of the best foods that you should eat is single ingredients food. Foods that are just natural, that just comes from like a tree or from a plant, or foods that's prepared together. Like if, for example, you're eating a salad, right? What I like to do normally is, if there's an option for a salad without any salad dressing and just pure salad, right? Pure salad with just vegetables and fruits, then I'll choose that option. And really, you just want to choose food that is easy to obsolete, easy to digest in your body. So then your body will feel lighter and you wouldn't have like a hard time to digest. Because the thing is, the more artificial and the more processed the food that we eat, the harder the time we give to our digestive systems and the more energy it needs to really burn down all of these food and really digest all of these food and extract all of the nutrients. I'm not going to get into the science here, but you probably get what I mean, right? And that basically causes us to be tired because we're putting more energy in our digestive system when we could be using it in other areas of our bodies. It's really as simple as that, right? Don't need a whole science degree to understand this thing. So some more specific shit food: plastic carton liquids that are not in the fridge. And when you go to the supermarket, you see rows of those like small Vitasoys or those small fruit juices. Completely artificial, completely processed. I'll try to avoid them as much as possible. Soda and vitamin water. Most of the time you'll see that, even though it might say this is vitamin E, this is vitamin B, the thing with these companies is that it has lots of chemicals inside of them. And most of the time, even though they say it's organic, unless if you actually read specific labels, which I'll go through later on, they're actually not organic. They're just putting the label there saying that it's organic as like a business model, so then you can buy into them. Because a lot of the time with these cheap food, what you realize that is it's just all a business. They just want to make profit. They want to generate it for the mass population. So if you think about restaurants like McDonald's, right, fast food in general, their business model is to pump as much food as possible in the lowest quality so then they can provide it in a cheap cost. And as a result, that makes you feel super unenergetic because these food, they're not even real food. They're basically fake food that's draining your energy, because food in general is supposed to give you this energy. Bread, that's another huge culprit that I found. I think back a couple of months ago, I was also trying to actually eat this sort of bread called the quinoa bread. And I thought this was also a healthy grain, but then what I realized is that because it's also processed, I also have this energy drain after eating that bread. So then I just completely cut bread out. At one point, I also used to eat a lot of wheat bread because I thought wheat bread was healthier than white bread, right? But then what I realized is that, yes, wheat bread is better than white bread in terms of digestion, but then it's still better to cut it out and just not eat carbs in general. And when I do eat carbs, actually, like the sort of carbs that I eat is more like natural carbs. So potato is a really good form of carbs, and rice in general is also a good form of carbs. But normally if you want to eat rice, try not to eat it for every single meal. Maybe eat it like once every other day. That's pretty good. Because again, like these carbs, it gives you this energy, but then if you eat too many and if you eat it for every single meal, it's like way too much for your body to process. No pasta, no cereal. Pretty obvious why. No dairy products, no corn. And try to avoid pre-made meals like, lunch boxes in general, because normally if you read the ingredients list and there's so many different ingredients, you actually don't know what they put in it. And if you can, also avoid frozen food, because if you think about food that doesn't deteriorate, Normally they put chemicals into that food to make it frozen in the first place and to make it last longer. So that can also impact your body. Avoid deli meat. So meat like sausages, salami, ham, bacon, canned meat, processed meat. Normally if there's an option to choose between white meat and red meat, I would eat white meat. Avoid pasta salads, wraps, sandwiches, especially things that have lots of sauces in it, because all of these sauces are artificial. Soup, that's a huge one. You really can't trust any restaurants anymore with producing these soup, because a lot of the time they'll put some random chemicals inside, even though if it's like mushroom soup or something like that, they're going to put some other ingredients, or it's either going to be super salty or super seasoned in this. And try and avoid it as much as you can, unless if you create your own soup. Avoid whey proteins, Atlantic salmon, swordfish, tuna, mackerel. Normally what you'll see is that these fishes contains metals that are harmful for our body. So you want to avoid them. Farm fish, basically anything that is mass produced, you would want to avoid that. Avoid coffee, alcohol. I think at one point I wasn't really a coffee addict, but then I drank coffee whenever I wanted to maximize my brain power during a test. But then you start to realize that it really can become an addiction, right? And you see people everywhere who's addicted to coffee, and they say, oh, black coffee is healthy and things like that. But really it's just lots of sugar in it, and it's just another addiction, just like alcohol. No candy, no milk chocolate, all of that snack section, chips, things like that. Just completely avoid that. Avoid corn-fed meat or corn-fed eggs. And what you realize is that when you go to the supermarket, like especially with eggs, because I'm someone who eats eggs every single morning, and I see egg as a really important part of my diet. Normally I'll eat 2 eggs in the morning and maybe 1 or 2 more eggs during the day. Is that you'll see that there's 2 types of eggs. One of them is pasture-raised eggs, which are the good type of eggs, is like naturally and organically raised, and the other ones, which are all the other labels, they're mostly corn-fed. And the problem with that is that that's mass-produced, and it's not really that healthy for you to eat corn-fed eggs. And I think another ingredient that you want to check is butter in general. And there's organic butter and also processed butter. And funny story is that I remember once when I was trying to bake cookies, I was trying to bake almond cookies. I was going to the supermarket, and I was just in that butter section, just looking through all of the different labels and things like that, and trying to find that organic butter. But then most of the time what you'll realize is that a lot of the butter, they have other ingredients as well, or they're not perishable. And what you'll want to do is buy food that's perishable, right? Things that may only last a couple days in your fridge, because those are the most organic food. So now swapping over to more specific food that is healthy for you, that is worth trying and testing out. Fresh fruits and vegetables. I mean, that's pretty obvious why, right? Pre-washed salad mix. So if you're going to build a salad, then you might want to do it yourself, so then you can know what ingredients is actually in that box. 100% pure canned fruits or vegetables, and you'll only want to use that for storing food, and ensure there's no sugar in them, like no additional sugar. An exception with frozen food is actually frozen fruits and vegetables. In general, they're also pretty healthy. There really isn't any artificial chemicals that they add to it. Fresh cold juices. And with juices in general, you really want to see how much sugar they're putting in the juices, because most of the time if you go to restaurants and you order like a watermelon juice or an apple juice, they might give it to you from like the carton in general. So you can actually taste yourself if there's like this texture, right, inside the juice to see if it's freshly squeezed. And what you want to order is also like the freshly squeezed one, if there's that option. The coconut water is also a really healthy one, just mentioning out there, because it's one of my all-time favorite drinks to enjoy whenever I go to a restaurant and eat with my friends. Pure nuts. I think nuts have been one of the snacks that I've been feasting on for quite a while now, and all sorts of nuts I love. Cashews, almonds, macadamia, walnut, pistachios, What else? Fresh and frozen meat. And with frozen meat, you want to ensure that they're organic or they're grass-fed as well. Another pretty niche one is hazelnut and almond butter. So it's really good alternative for normal butter. Because normally these butter, they're just a mixture of almonds and actual fresh butter, and natural butter. So then it's a really healthy option. Organic pasture-raised eggs. And organic spices like herbs and things that actually come out of plants, and they haven't actually mixed it with some other artificial sauces. Those are pretty healthy. In terms of oil, oil is a very important aspect when it comes to cooking because you basically have them in every single meal. Olive oil, coconut oil, flax oil, sesame oil, avocado oil. They're definitely more of the healthy options compared to normal oil. So really try and get some of those and test them out during cooking when you can. Some other more niche vegetables like olives, pickles, kombucha, hummus, seaweed. I think one thing with snacks that is available is actually seaweed, but you want to kind of avoid the seaweed which is way too seasoned, because a lot of the times when you see these company brands, they produce seaweed but then they have it in like multiple different flavors, so you want to choose like the organic ones or the ones with like less salt. Almond and coconut milk. Some of the best grains that you can choose is quinoa, rice, beans. Normally these things comes out of plants, right, like quinoa and beans. And with meat, you also want to take a look at BPA-free meat, unsweetened tea, green tea. I think tea is a very interesting one, right? Especially someone who drinks tea, seldomly. Not, I wouldn't say I'm a huge tea lover, but you definitely want to drink the tea that comes out of those like tea leaf packets rather than having those ones which are like from your convenience store and they're already fully like mixed for you, because you never know what they put in there. And some other really nice pre-made food that you can check out is also sushi, right? I think this is a huge fan favorite, but sushi is a really nice organic meal for you to eat. But then also watch out for the amount of rice that you're intaking with sushi, because if you eat sushi every day, you might be taking too much carbs. Whole roasted chicken, another great one. And make your own salad, right? Using vinegar, olive oil, lemon juice. Those are some really good pre-made options if you know that you're going to a place where there's not going to be like organic or fresh food. I think one thing with this list that's super important is it's keen to know that you shouldn't expect yourself to be following it 100% of the time, because it's basically impossible. During certain situations, you'll have to eat with your friends and things like that. But with that list in mind, you would want to more likely follow it like 80% or 90% of the time to really get this transformation, this energy boost, right? And actually living in a way that feels organic to you, that feels natural to you, so then you can unleash all of these creative potentials inside of you. Some other shopping notes that I want to end with here is never assume something is healthy just by looking at the front of the box. And what you want to do is always read the labels, because in the front of the box, it might say 100% organic, or you might see like a really organic piece of fruit, right? An organic piece of mango. But then if you don't read the nutrition label at the back, you won't know how much other added ingredients are there, or how much sugar there are, or how much fat there is, right? So always check the labels. And some of the labels to some of the most healthy foods is USDA organic food. So you can see that they have a badge there, and there's like a check mark, I think with the USDA. So those are really organic food and food that's definitely healthy to go for. And if you see any labels for grass-fed or pasture-raised, those are also positive labels. And anything with dairy-free, gluten-free, soy-free, or non-GMO, those are other labels to look out for. And one interesting thing that just popped up is like things that list sugar-free. Because most of the time what we think about sugar-free is that it's no sugar, right? So it means that they haven't put anything. But then after doing some research, what I realized is that these sugar-free products actually put more chemicals into the original item that has sugar to make it sugar-free. So that in terms of that sense, it's actually not organic. So you also want to watch out for things that write sugar-free, because most of the time you want to be careful whether or not that actually is organic or if that's actually processed to make it be sugar-free with more chemicals. And typically with food, you will also want to look for ingredients that are less than 5 per item, right? If you have a food that has hundreds of ingredients, then you probably want to avoid that because you don't exactly know what they put in it, and some of them might harm your body heavily. And with these ingredients, what you want to ask yourself is, are these natural ingredients? Are these whole ingredients? Or are these ingredients, come up with a weird name? Because most of the time when there's a weird, long-ass name to that ingredient, then they're probably artificially made. It's like, I remember seeing those words like the oils, right? They have different types of oils, and some of the oil names are like 20 letters long for like the name in general, and you're tempted to search it up. And then what you'll realize is that most of the time there's lots of chemicals in them. So just when you see names that are not recognizable, then you probably want to avoid those food as well. So in general, what my nutrition have been, for the past, I would say, year or two already, is that during breakfast, I would simply make 2 eggs. So it could be scrambled eggs, sunny side up, so just classic clean breakfast. And I would also eat an avocado on the side with the egg. And then for lunch, depending on where I am, so if I'm in school, they have a really nice salad bar, I would choose like a salad option that has like less sauce and just more veggies in general. And I will also add on a type of meat. Normally it will be chicken or salmon to eat, but I would say I would eat more chicken every single day. And if it's not in school, then I will choose whatever's the most healthiest option. So like one of the nearby places in my apartment is a convenience store, and I'm super fortunate to have that convenience store because they provide these salads, these boxes of salad that does not have sauce in it, and it's just pure veggies. So I'll just grab one of these boxes for lunch and eat them. And then for dinner, I would either actually eat something related to carbs, but normally I do still avoid carbs. So I would eat carbs probably like 1 or 2 times a week. And those 1 or 2 times a week would be either like sushi, something including with rice, or potatoes, as I really am a huge fan of sweet potatoes, especially the ones which are purple, as they also help my digestive system clear out all the bacteria and everything. But in general, my dinner meals are 1 type of meat and then 1 or 2 types of veg. So normally what I've been eating lately is, again, more chicken pieces for dinner, and then also cabbages, and they have like bok choys, and they have like choy sums or lettuce, really depending on what we have during that day. But yeah, it's pretty simple meal, to be honest. Not much sauces, not much excitement, but it's really about the consistency of doing this every single day, and then you'll see the transformation over time and see how much energy it brings you. And again, it comes back to listening to your body, right? How does your body feel after eating this in the long term? Do you feel lighter or do you feel heavier? And that's one of the big signs that I found when I'm testing my food to determine whether or not I should continue eating, is like, do I feel like I want to go to sleep? Do I feel kind of like not productive afterwards? Or do I feel like, damn, I'm actually feeling light? It's like you fulfill that hunger inside of you, but then you're still able to move. You're still able to drive, yeah? Because most of the time what you'll feel is if you overeat too much, you'll feel heavy. You'll feel like you don't want to work. And like, especially when you sit back down, your entire mind will just slack off and you'll go off task and things like that. So that's just an interesting sign to keep out on the watch for. All right, so I hope this list and some of my personal experiences gave you a general idea of what types of food you should be aiming to remove from your life right now, and also maybe introducing and testing out in your life. Right? And it's really, again, important to understand that your body is different from someone else's body, so you shouldn't be making comparisons, right? And it's, again, finding that balance with what works best for you and what does not work for you, and adapting to that list over time, because as you grow older, your body also evolves and your needs for different types of food is also going to change. So that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Signing out. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.